and welcome to the Jam Yearbook. I'm Matt.
And I'm Jim.
We're taking a detour from our normal format today. Welcome to version 1967 and a time that many people know as the Summer of Love.
Yeah, we've talked for quite a while about how we could incorporate music from the 1960s into the show. Even though we've been going through the years in our lifetime, there's a lot of music that influenced the both of us that came out in the 1960s, no doubt about it. We usually start the show talking about significant people who've had an impact on the music around us personally, but we're not going to do that today.
No, we're not. This is not the day to play the Reaper, mainly because we wouldn't recognize any of the names that passed away in 67. No disrespect, but we just wouldn't have that feeling. And this is not about death. It's about love. It's 1967, the Summer of Love. Today, we're playing Cupid and the Stork and bringing you a pretty interesting list of people who were born in 1967.
Yes, we are.
There are many big names here. People from our generation will know. Dave Matthews, happy birthday.
Woo!
Kurt Cobain, Billy Corgan, Liz Phair, Lover, Rob Bass, Heavy D, Dave Navarro, Noel Gallagher, Serge Tankian, Lane Staley, Scott Weiland, Jeff Tweedy, people might know from Wilco, Harry Connick Jr., Nelson, why, Matthew and Gunnar, I don't know. We've talked about their father, Ricky Nelson, previously.
Yes, we have. Yeah.
So happy birthday to the Nelsons. Shannon Hoon from Blind Melon, Keith Urban, David Gaeta, Tim McGraw and Faith Hill, born in the same year and married. Gotta love that on Valentine's Day.
That's cool.
Steve Harwell from Smash Mouth, Jason Cooper, the drummer from The Cure, Evan Dando from the Lemonheads, John Popper, Mike Portnoy, drummer extraordinaire, and Adam Schlesinger from Fountains of Wayne.
There you go. All right, take a break. I will go through.
I gotta grab a breath here. Jesus.
Also, going from May through September to follow the proper calendar seasons, here's a list of people born in the first 4 months of 1968, more than likely conceived during the Summer of Love. So they're the true byproducts of the era. LL Cool J. Well, there you go. Mike Patton. Well, there you go.
Oh, yeah.
Sarah McLachlan, Lisa Marie Presley, Brad Knoll from Sublime, Lisa Leob, Mark McGrath, your favorite, Matt. Kenny Chesney, James Iha, Celine Dion, Sebastian Bach, Darcy Retzky, May 1st, so we might as well include her.
Hell yeah. You got James Iha and Billy Corgan? Why not?
Yeah. The Summer of Love was a name coined due to a large influx of, let's just say it, hippies to San Francisco, and particularly the neighborhood of Haight-Ashbury. They say as many as 100,000 people arrived that summer, mainly people interested in getting away from the horrors of the Vietnam War, to have artistic and creative freedoms, and some to create new political movements. Psychedelic drugs were prominent.
That's the number one reason right
there.
Yeah.
Timothy Leary was there, and his phrase, turn in, tune in, and drop out, inspired a lot of young people across the country to drop out of school or college. This is where you get that term dropout from, somebody who's a high school dropout. It was Timothy Leary, 1967. But there we go. That's all we're going to do with the history part of it. Let's talk about the music, because that's what we come here for. There are some monster albums. What was your first thought when you started looking back at the music from 1967?
Man, when we were first hammering out what the show was going to be, I remember telling you how I've always found it extremely interesting how so many different genres and sounds exist in any given year. I think that bit of pondering immediately became the backbone of what the Jam Yearbook was initially going to be. I can really hear all these differences in the 60s and 70s. And when I approached 1967, there were the expected bands: the Doors, Beatles, Rolling Stones, Jimi Hendrix, Beach Boys, the Kinks, everything that everybody would expect.
Mm-hmm.
But then I started thinking, wait a second, this is the Summer of Love. Drugs aside, right? We all know those bands and drugs. I don't really associate those bands with the Summer of Love label, quote unquote, on my end. in part because those bands, they're transcendent, right? They are just they're legends, they're above everything. But and you hit the nail on the head. There are monster albums in 1967, Magical Mystery Tour and Sergeant Pepper's in the same year.
Yeah.
Wow, that's freaking huge. And the first two Hendrix albums. It's also the year we have debuts from David Bowie, Pink Floyd, and the Velvet Underground. It's probably more historically huge than at the moment, but looking back, you look at it and you go, wow, this 1967 is really huge.
Huge.
I had to really think about what music I thought defined that label, Summer of Love. For me, a defining song, and it's probably because of the title, is San Francisco by Scott McKenzie. This might be the theme song. You're talking about Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco at the beginning.
Yeah.
This is it. I'm thinking songs more in the vein of Nights in White Satin, Happy Together by the Turtles, Donovan, Mamas and the Papas, little This is Dedicated to the One I Love or Mellow Yellow. I'm kind of thinking in those veins is probably like the soundtrack of the Summer of Love.
No, absolutely. You are correct. I'd add Jefferson Airplane maybe to that list.
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah. There's also a big sound that might have been mistaken for country blues taking place as well. Albert King was still putting out albums during that time. B.B. King was out doing his thing. But bands like Country Joe and the Fish, John Mayall and the Blues Breakers, and the band that was probably at the center of it all, especially in San Francisco, the Grateful Dead.
Hell yeah.
Matt, we've not been kind to the dead in our lifetime. We have to admit
Hell
that.
yeah.
And, and this isn't a conversation I expect us to be agreeable upon. But something finally happened to me this week. And I didn't wish it upon me, and I didn't realize it would happen. I was walking into work, and I was going through 1967 albums, and I came across the debut album of the Grateful Dead.
Show the doctor on the doll where you were touched.
Well, I saw the song Sitting on Top of the World, and I decided to hit play. Surprisingly, to my absolute astonishment, for the first time, I kind of got it. It made sense. I wound up finishing the album and went back to the beginning. And I could hear why people praise Jerry's playing so much. The songs, they just had a nice feel from track to track. It sounded great. I was really happy. Maybe it was just a good rhythm to walk with or something going on my way. But,
Yeah, maybe.
There's so much that I will skip by when I'm walking into work and hearing songs that I don't like. And this actually gave me a lot of stuff that I was tuned into and enjoying. Look, I'm not about to start digging into the bootlegs or wishing that I'd follow them on tour back in the day, but I'm going to be a little more forgiving, and I'm going to pull back a little bit of my angst towards them and the fans. And if I ever feel like turning towards the Dead again, this is going to be the album I'm going to reach for.
Well, good for you. I told you I was not going to listen to this album. Last version, you tricked me into listening to Miley Cyrus. Right? But damn it, I got curious and I started listening, and I tapped out after like 3 songs. I'm like,
did you start at the beginning or did you start?
Yes, I did.
No,
yes, I did.
Don't start at the beginning. I think where I started in the album Sitting on Top of the World made a difference.
Oh, okay.
I do. I think because I picked a random song in the middle, sometimes we talked in earlier episodes about how you can listen to the first 2 or 3 tracks and be like, this album sucks, and you don't listen to the rest of it.
That's right, because that's how an album should flow. That first song should grab you. By the third one, you slow it down.
I agree with that, but 1967, they were not into making albums the same way as they are in 1987.
True, different times.
What I found was, and I did, when I went back to the beginning of the album and listened to it from track 1, I didn't get the same experience as listening from Sitting on Top of the World to the end. So I'll give that to you. But there was just something about it that I have to say, go back, start there. Don't start on track 1, because when you get to the little schoolgirl song, you just tap out. You're like, there's something wrong here. It's not right.
Yeah. No, I'll take your words of wisdom and start it over, because so many people like the Dead. It's one of those bands where I feel like man, there must be something wrong with me because I don't get them. But I know I'm not alone in that, and overall, though, I'm happy you were able to connect with it because we've had this back and forth. Yeah, the Dead suck, well, not suck, but we just don't get it. And maybe one day I'll be in that right headspace to accept it. I
Yeah.
try not to say too much negative about the Dead out of respect,
Mhm.
because the fans, they're everywhere and you never know where they are, really. There could be one right next to you. And they know more about it than I do. They get it.
Yeah.
It's probably my loss, but
Yeah.
I'm willing to take one for the team.
Okay.
In 1967 also gave us some country legends. That's not too far away from the Dead. We
Nope.
got Glenn, Waylon, Willie, Merle, George, Johnny. If you noticed right there, all I had to do was say first names, and you all knew who I was talking about.
Absolutely.
Oh, legends. But Bobby Gentry, while maybe not the household name like the others, she gave us maybe the best of all of them with the Ode to Billy Joe.
Yeah, you've already touched on some of the singer-songwriters, but there were some huge moments from them as well in 1967. Dude, come on, man. Neil Diamond, Just for You. Look at the track listing.
Finally.
Red, Red Wine, I'm a Believer, Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon, Solitary Man, Shiloh, Cherry Cherry. Like, wow, this is a greatest hits album. And it's the start of his career.
Oh man, this was the big surprise album for me. I clicked on it expecting like maybe one or two songs. I can't imagine coming out with this is his second album and having all of these hits. I think they've all been covered at one point. Obviously, the Monkees covered I'm a Believer in 67. But this album, just go listen to it. You'll know you'll know, most 90% of the songs on it. It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you have Arlo Guthrie. He released Alice's Restaurant in 1967. And that song continues to get radio play every single year as an American Thanksgiving classic. But here we go. I'm not going to recommend that you listen to the Yusuf Cat Stevens album in 1967. He was trying to break into the music business as another Tom Jones at this time, and he wants you to ring his ding dong. It's just weird.
But Jim, he just wants to show you how he can ride. God damn, that was awful. There is no Summer of Love for Cat Stevens. I've never had a really high opinion of his music, and this album did not help one bit. It's terrible.
Yeah, it is. It is. But before we go any further, you might remember John DeGreither from version 1995. He gave us a rundown on Britpop for that year. Well, he's here now to talk to us about the British version of Summer of Love. We found out this wasn't in 1967 and felt like it would be better for somebody local to present and describe this to us. So here we go, John. Take it away.
Thanks, Jim and Matt. This is John, your man from Blighty, your English music chum on the street. And thank you for inviting me back to talk about Britain's very own Summer of Love that took place in the 1980s and was based around rave culture. I'm really glad to be given this chance to talk about rave, which I'm eminently qualified to talk about, whilst you guys get to talk about the proper definitive Summer of Love of the 1960s. Actually, can you turn that music off? And can I just say, Jim and Matt, how peeved I am that whilst I'm stuck on rave duty, you guys are talking about the 1960s and the Summer of Love, and whilst some people might really like rave, and that's fine. Have you met me? I was born to talk about the 1960s. That's my whole wheelhouse. So, to be honest, I'm going to channel the revolutionary spirit of the 1960s Summer of Love and nominate my own favorite Beatles track from that era, and you have to put it on your playlist. Okay? You weren't expecting that, were you? Okay, so my nomination for my favorite Beatles Summer of Love song is Strawberry Fields. It encapsulates so much of that psychedelic era. It is also a very eccentrically English song, and it conjures up images of English country gardens as if it's taking place in a summer fete in the church. I don't know why, but it just kind of brings those images up for me. I also recommend listening to the anthology version of this song. It's stripped of all its accompaniment and it's just Lennon's guitar and vocal, and it really adds poignancy to the lyrics, and it highlights how deep and interesting the lyrics really are. So there you go. There was my take on the Summer of Love. This is John, your annoyed to be stuck on rave duty correspondent, signing petulantly back to the studio.
Thanks, John. Good job. Matt, I don't think we learned much about the British Summer of Love.
It didn't exist.
No, something tells me that's okay. We can honor
Yeah.
John's pick. Strawberry Fields gets added to the playlist.
Hell yeah.
At least the burden isn't on us to add a Beatles song this week.
Oh my God. Because how could you choose?
No,
That would be impossible.
it would be. We could probably do an entire show about the Beatles. And I'm sure there are a dozen more out there right now that are talking about them.
Yeah.
But it is incredible to think that Magical Mystery Tour and Sgt. Pepper's came out in this year.
Jeez.
I've always leaned towards Magical Mystery Tour. I understand the brilliance of Sgt. Pepper's. Neither, though, are my favorite albums from them, but they still had an impact on my life and my musical journey.
Yeah. If I have to choose, I think I take Sgt. Pepper's. Either way, you win. There's no loser there.
No.
They're both incredible. In picking a favorite Beatles album, how do you do that? It's almost impossible. Maybe like Rubber Soul
Yeah.
might be mine. Revolver. Oh,
Yeah.
it's tough.
Yeah, for me, it's a tie between Revolver and Abbey Road, but that's
Oh,
the best
yeah.
thing about them. The diversity of their albums just give more opportunities to discover them.
At the start of this version, I was saying how so many different sounds are around in every given year. That's kind of how this show was formed. I feel like I've been programmed that the 60s were all classic rock and that I forgot about all the great R&B and soul. This is some of the earliest music I remember hearing around me growing up.
Yeah.
Here we get mixed in with everything we've talked about this week, the R&B, the soul, and even the funk. It stands out as my favorite. Not that I have to choose, and it doesn't mean I think the Beatles are garbage, because that is a completely false and erroneous statement, because they're awesome. I realize I've neglected part of myself by not listening to this music more often. The 60s had a ton of male and female vocal groups like the Miracles, Temptations, Supremes, Ronettes, Four Tops. These were the Boys to Men and the Destiny's Child of this era.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. At the start of this, I didn't realize how attached I was to 1967 music.
Me either.
Yeah, I'm sure there will probably be other years in the 60s that have impacted me, but I kind of felt like this was the foundation where my musical house lies in right here. So I'm probably going to get pretty deep as we dig into our five.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that, because I completely agree with you right there.
Yeah, trigger alert for me, just so you know.
Yeah, no, this lays the foundation of what I think about music going forward, I think. So, Jim, we usually keep these special shows a little brief. So
Mhm.
we're going to wheel into our five right now, and it's your turn to kick us off. So you're taking a drink. I will let you finish. What is your what is your first song?
My first song is Buffalo Springfield's Mr. Soul. I caught Neil Young performing this at some point when I was younger and thought it was a solo song because it was on his Decade Greatest Hits compilation that came out in 1977. I didn't pay much attention to Buffalo Springfield in my lifetime. So when the opportunity came to share this song this week, I did not second guess myself. Right here at the start of his career, his songwriting is in top form. His signature guitar sound can be heard. I just love the groove and flow of the whole song. It's a great start to an outstanding song catalog that he still had ahead of himself to write.
Oh, you're so right. This was so cool to hear again. I can't remember the last time I heard this.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I love all the different guitar sounds. And sometimes Neil, his singing can be a little bit more delicate at
Mm-hmm.
times,
Mm-hmm.
but here he's just singing,
Yeah.
right? You're getting full voice Neil. This
Yeah.
is a great song.
It is.
Great, 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 great song.
All right. So what's your first song from 1967?
All right, I'm going to start out personally on a high note.
Mm-hmm.
The Supremes. Love the Supremes. You keep me hanging on. This is prime Diana Ross. I was so happy the Supremes had an album in 1967 so I could talk about the Supremes. I love the Motown beat. It's
Yeah.
up front and it drives the song. You Keep Me Hanging On is written and recorded. It's perfect. I wouldn't want to be the guy on the other end of this song because he's getting the business. He's getting told to get the hell out.
Yep.
It comes from a place of power for her, and it's backed up by a strong, upbeat tempo. It's not dripped in sadness or whatever this. It's telling somebody to get out. I'm better without you.
Great place to start.
Great place. All right. So what is your number 2 song?
My number 2 song, all right, is Jimi Hendrix. Well, there we go. Spanish Castle Magic. This is my favorite Hendrix song. It has all the elements that make Hendrix great. It's got cool lyrics. I mean, come on. Who wants to fly on a dragonfly? A rock and groove.
Hell yeah.
And the guitar solo that pans from ear to ear when you're listening to it on headphones.
Love that.
I get that his band has received criticism over time because of their sway, the timing, a little bit of sloppiness. But I like to think that Hendrix knew this was part of his sound at the start of his career. He liked this recklessness and the spontaneity behind it. He explores those spaces in between everything and created his magic in all the right places around it. If someone said to me, pick one Hendrix song to take with me for the rest of my life, and I never get to hear another, this would be it.
You know what, Jim? Thank you. Screw people that want to bang on Hendrix for sloppiness. This is rock and roll.
Yeah, it is.
You know what? Rock is sloppy. It's dirty. It's gritty. It shouldn't be so polished that it has no feeling to it. The rough around the edges, that's what makes Hendrix awesome.
Mm-hmm.
This song always sounded like Jimmy said, hey, guys, just follow me. We'll figure it out. And he didn't know where he was going. But Mitch and Noel knew exactly what to do. His solo in this song is a freaking masterpiece.
Yeah, it is. It is. All right. So what's your second song? Let's hear it.
My second song is going to be Aretha Franklin's Chain of Fools. One of the most powerful, beautiful voices of all time. I won't sing it because I can't do it justice. But when it comes in with that smooth chain, 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 I'm hooked. The music is so slinky, and Aretha just does her thing, and it all blends. It's perfect. This song is perfect. Again, the Supremes are perfect. Aretha Franklin, this song's perfect too.
Nice. Yeah. I think everything you say about Aretha Franklin could probably have perfect stuck at the end of it.
Yeah, I don't know if you could say a negative thing about what she's done.
You know, you have to be a real hardcore dick to say anything bad about Aretha.
Yeah, hell yeah. All right, Jim, what's your third song?
My third song is The Doors, The Crystal Ship. It's time for a story here. When I was in 6th grade, I went to the local library. You could also check out records, not just books. One of my classmates had seen a Doors concert video his mom had played him, and he described Jim Morrison swinging the microphone over his head. And I thought it sounded like the coolest thing in the world. So when I was in the library and I saw the record there, I brought the Doors' greatest hits home, and I never returned it. I began an obsession that ran through my teens, and it only ended because I had a goal to play Jim Morrison in a biopic. I decided on this when I was probably about 15 or 16 years old. When Oliver Stone made his Doors movie and Don't mind me. I love Val Kilmer's performance in it. I ended up losing a lot of my interests and my obsessions kind of went away. This isn't something I've told a lot of people, during my years. People have a lot of opinions about the Doors, and the majority that I've heard in my adult years have been mostly negative, but they put out 2 great albums in 1967, and they were as big as any other band in that time. I love this song. It has all the classic elements of Doors music and some of Jim's best lyrics. It stands out among all of the more well-known classics to me.
You know what? I don't know how this came about where people want to bang on the Doors lately.
I hear the same sentiment over and over again. Jim Morrison is such a waste.
Why? He was a poet.
He's no more a waste than Kurt Cobain, than Shannon Hoon, than Janis Joplin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. He was, I don't know. Maybe not ahead of his time, but he was just on a different thinking level than the average person. Maybe, I don't know, that maybe sound a little douchey on my part, but he was just thinking about things differently than people. And I thank you for choosing the Crystal Ship instead of like You Light My Fire or something that you've heard 100,000 times. This is a really great song. This is the kind of song that maybe people don't hear from the Doors, but they need to, because it shows a different side of them.
I think there's a nice sentiment to the song.
Definitely.
And when you get the Greatest Hits album, it slides really subtly in there in the tracks. And I think that's just the way it came through on the vinyl at that time.
Yep. And I think it's one of those songs that it gets halfway through and you're like, wait a second, what am I listening to?
Yeah.
And then you pay attention and then you go back to the beginning to get the full message.
Yeah, it does. Yep.
Yeah. Great song.
All right. So what's your next?
My next is Smokey Robinson and the Miracles with I Second That Emotion. I'm back for more Motown. Can't live without it. No one sings like Smokey Robinson. That nickname, it's always kind of confused me because his voice is like silk. It's so smooth and beautiful. It's another song like You Keep Me Hanging On that they could have slowed it down because of the subject material. He really likes the girl, but she's not having it. But he's undeterred. He wants to spend any time he can with her. He's upbeat and happy as he sings, A Taste of Honey is worse than none at all.
Absolutely.
All right, Jim, what is your 4th song?
My 4th song I discovered because I was babysitting at one point when I was 14, 15 years old.
Jim, and it was always embarrassing for me to have a babysitter younger than me.
Well, I was going to say, I was babysitting for a doctor and he had this massive vinyl collection. And I'd go over, and most of the time they were going off for the night and the kids were going to bed and I was left in front of the television or music. So obviously I dived into listening to vinyl, and this is where I got a lot of my musical education from, because it was just putting something on one after the other and discovering what I would like out of it. And they had a Peter, Paul and Mary album. And I came across this song, I Dig Rock and Roll Music. That was probably about, like I said, 14, 15, 16 years old. Have you ever had a song that served as a distraction in your life? It's something that you would hum when things weren't going well in your day, a melody that stuck in there, more likely at work than anywhere else, and it changes the mood that you were in and helps it helps you stay even keeled. This wound up being the song for me. Even though I listened to it back then, it actually got into my head and helped me a lot through recent years. This is definitely a folk rock song. Peter, Paul, and Mary are belting out their signature harmonies to an acoustic tune, but you can dance to it. The lyrics they're a lot of fun too. You can sing along. It's hard not to pick maybe Leaving on the Jet Plane for me, because I've got some sentimental attachment that I'm going to probably bring up in a future episode, which is weird because we won't be in 1967. But I Dig Rock and Roll Music is my favorite Peter, Paul and Mary song without any doubt.
Even above Puff the Magic Dragon.
That is
It's got a different sentiment.
different sentiments.
Yeah.
We talk about earworms in episodes, and
Oh yeah.
this
is one of 'em.
song is an earworm. It makes me want to dance
yeah.
like somebody in the 1960s. It makes me.
It's got a great
my
groove.
elbows go out, and I just
Yeah,
dig
yeah, that's exactly
rock
it.
and roll music.
Yeah, and this is the sound I associate with the Summer of Love.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. It's
I'd-
got a great groove.
I'd love to be in somebody's living room in 1967 and they put this album on and we've had a good time.
Oh, yeah. And I remember texting you about the song saying, oh man, I'm jealous about that Peter, Paul, and Mary song. Everybody listening who's probably laughing at me for saying that, go listen to this song. It's perfect.
Oh,
it's
such
awesome.
a good song.
It's such a great song.
Yeah.
You will dig rock and roll music.
Yes, you will. All right, Matt, what is your fourth song?
My fourth is going to be Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell with Ain't No Mountain High Enough. It's not Motown, but it was recorded in Detroit. It's got that style. It's a classic. Bold, happy. It's a declaration of love. The music in the verses, it kind of lilts along until it gets to the refrains, and then it's so tight and powerful. It's just one of those songs I can never, ever get tired of.
Yeah, it's such a great song. How can you ever get tired of this? There's no chance.
Classic.
Yeah. And it's amazing that this is where Marvin Gaye started his career. I think that Tammy Terrell does not get the, significant attention that she should get on the same stage, because she was the backbone of where he kind of came from.
Oh yeah, she was at least half of this song.
Oh, 100%. Half of anything that he did, back in the 60s. So the duo that they had was amazing.
So we weren't going to play the Reaper on this episode, but there
Mhm.
is a sad story attached with this song.
Okay.
Tammy Terrell, her and Marvin were performing this song on stage, and she collapsed in his arms in 67, and she was diagnosed with a brain tumor, which she sadly passed away with in 1970. And it's so sad. We weren't going to play the Reaper, but I think this was like it's an important moment in history of music to not lose sight of it. Everybody knows Marvin Gaye, right?
Yeah.
Who talks about Tammy Terrell? And this was probably her crowning achievement.
Oh, absolutely.
In music, because it was an absolutely huge song. And she was taken away from us too soon. Who knew what heights she could have achieved?
Yeah. I mean, look at where Marvin went, and they were side by side.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. My last song.
All right, Jim, what are you going to wrap up your 5 with?
This is depressing to have to wrap up my 1967 song.
I know. I kind of left us in a heavy space.
No, but
it's up to you to bring us out of it.
All right, I will, but I could probably bring about another 20 songs from 1967.
Oh yeah, endless supply of great music from 67.
But I'm so happy to talk about the Beach Boys song Good Vibrations. Matt, like, how much time do we have here?
Not enough.
No, probably not enough. This song is one of the most brilliant songs of all time. It is pieced together from over 100 hours of recording tape, different assembled musicians and instrumentations, all patchworked together to create a song that's genius. Imagine just thinking of splicing all of this tape together. Adding to all that is the element that Brian Wilson felt like he was competing with the Beatles to create better records at the time.
And they felt like they were competing with him too.
Oh, absolutely. And they were.
Oh, yeah.
Brian Wilson used the studio as an instrument to create this song. It's one of the most amazing pieces of music of the 20th century, hands down. I saw Brian Wilson perform this in 2008. You know how much I really admire his work.
I'm so jealous.
I cried. I couldn't believe I was watching the man who wrote California Girls, Fun, 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 God Only Knows, and this, Good Vibrations.
I saw the Beach Boys live. but this was on the Kokomo era of the Beach Boys. So Brian Wilson wasn't there. But this song, it's perfect.
Mhm.
I think I've said it about this must be the at least the third song I've said is perfect. I'm dumbfounded by how songs like this come into existence. The vision you need to see it through to its end, it's beyond what I can, comprehend. What started out as a melody and a little conversation he had as a kid with his mother, and Mike Love added the lyrics into the melody, and then they just keep adding layers and upon layers upon layers. Hey, let's throw in a theremin. Hey, how about a jaw harp? This is considered one of the most important recordings in history for good reason. It's
Oh,
awesome.
yeah. I think if they go and look up music recordings of America in the 1960s, and there was one song that they pulled out of a vault to talk about, this is it.
Exactly. And I think people producing music now should have to take a master class from Brian Wilson on how it used to have to be done to maybe really appreciate it.
Yeah. And I haven't even brought up the fact that the Wrecking Crew were
Oh,
the
that's
band
right.
recording this. And if you ever want to really look up one of the greatest recording studio bands of all time, go look up the Wrecking Crew.
Hell yeah.
We could do a separate show possibly on
Oh my
everything
God.
the Wrecking Crew has been a
Yeah.
part of, because
There used to be a doc on Netflix about the Wrecking Crew. It's
Yeah.
probably still there. Check it out. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
It is. But they were the band that Brian Wilson brought in to do this song. And
Oh,
yeah, it just makes an amazing piece. So that's my
Great.
5 songs from 1967. Can I have another 5, please? Or
I'm gonna keep the theme alive.
All right.
Because listening to all of this R&B this week, I just felt like more complete. So I'm going to go with Sam and Dave and Soul Man. Classic R&B, this time it's got a little gospel flair. I don't even need to say anything about the song.
No, you
Again,
don't.
it's perfect. Everyone knows it.
Yep.
If it doesn't put a smile on your face, you have a problem.
Yeah.
You are the problem. It's not this song. It's you. It's perfect. Sam and Dave, Soul Man. Love it.
Great song. Great choice.
For me, like in the 60s, all I think of is classic rock. Summer of Love, you think of Windy by the Association.
Mhm.
But no, there is also this great faction of R&B and soul that it trumps it all. It's great. It's so fucking awesome. I really needed to spotlight this R&B and soul because I don't think it's associated with the Summer of Love, but it's in 67 and it shouldn't be forgotten. It's so fantastic.
It is. Yeah. They're great songs there. So Matt, it is time for you to wrap up 1967 and to tell us where we're going to go next.
So next week, we are going to go to the year 2000. We hope everyone has enjoyed our little deviation from the normal show. We like doing these. Well, actually, no, we love doing these out of the box versions from our normal. And we definitely added some great sounds to the playlist this week. But next week, we're going to the year 2000.
Ooh.
How does that grab you, Jim?
It grabs me by the 2000s. I don't know what to say.
That's good. That's good. The 2000s should be interesting. We do this every week, but I really don't expect a lot from 2000.
I've got something.
I think I'm more in a retro mood in 2000.
Yeah, it was a good time for me. I had a good time in 2000.
Time will tell.
So we'll see what we've got when we get there.
You said it in that sly fashion, like you got it tucked into your sleeve right there. You know what you're bringing.
There's no Miley Cyrus, don't worry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We certainly want to thank everyone for tuning each and every week. Remember to get your votes and on the Facebook page for the next version. Jim will be posting those selections soon. And we will see you back here next week as we head to the year 2000.
Yes, we will. See everybody in 2000. Peace, love, and podcast.
Peace. In case you were waiting for me to say it.